WWE. Is TKO slowly killing the WWE? Is TKO slowly killing the WWE? Is TKO slowly killing the WWE? Is TKO slowly killing the WWE?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Ango Show. It is June 9th, Monday, 2025. My name is Ango, and today here on the Ango Show Live, we have a variety of topics we're going to be discussing, and I'm super excited about this. I do apologize greatly as well. For the past week and a half, I've been dealing with some really bad sinuses, and I'm still not 100%, but I'm feeling a lot better now to the point where I just want to get back into the live streaming. I miss this stuff so much. Today is literally a crazy day for professional wrestling news topics. And coming up on today's episode of the show, ladies and gentlemen, we're talking about Mr. Iguana going to NXT. We're talking about WWE Worlds Collide shattering records. Also, in addition to that, we will be breaking down a little bit of Money in the Bank. Of course, we'll review that. Ron Killings is in. R-Truth is out. And in addition to that, we're going to kick things off today with a massive topic surrounding Warner Brothers Discovery, which quite frankly is going to probably get controversial here. My name is Ango. Today, I am joined by my good friend, Billy. Shout out to BillyTKO. He is here joining us live remotely. BillyTKO, it's been a minute. But of course, we just had a massive weekend. We had a massive weekend with Worlds Collide, Money in the Bank, so many things happening just in general. Before we get into the news topics today, how are you feeling about pro wrestling? We haven't talked in about 11 days. So I'm just very curious to know exactly what you're thinking going forward.
Well, the state of pro wrestling is the state of pro wrestling. It is no different than it was 11 days ago. Wrestling fans are still wrestling fans, and they are making uproars about things. But I feel like we're going to dive into all of that today. So, yeah, that's how I'm feeling.
Perfect. That's what I like to hear. Guys, ladies and gentlemen, we do have our Super Chat goal active. By the end of the stream, we will be answering all Super Chats. Also, YouTube has enabled a new feature, and this feature is the community leaderboard. So if you guys want to be recognized for your contributions to the show, we will be congratulating those in the leaderboard by the end of today's stream. As of right now, Pete Rocks is currently number 1, number 2 is Chester, and number 3 is Nats fan. So the more you're engaged, the more super chats and memberships and gifting and all that stuff, YouTube is actually going to give you a badge surrounding your name for the live streams. So of course, I definitely appreciate your guys' engagement. Definitely appreciate your guys' contributions. Our super chat goal is active, and I think the best way to do things today, kick things off with AEW Warner Bros. Discovery. There has been some groundbreaking news. I'm going to throw up a graphic in just a moment. But today, Billy, it's been revealed that Warner Bros. Discovery is splitting up their company into 2 publicly traded companies. So one of these companies is going to be the WBD Global Networks, and the other one is WBD Streaming and Studios. So I've just thrown the graphic up. Basically, for those who don't know, Warner Bros. Discovery is struggling. It's been an issue, honestly, for a very, very long time. Continues to get worse. But now the way the company is splitting up is actually a very interesting way, because on the left side here, we have the global networks. So Discovery, Bleacher Report, HGTV, CNN, True TV, TNT, TLC, NCAA, Cartoon Network, Food Network, TBS, NHL, Adult Swim, TNT Sports, the Olympics, MLB, right? All of these will be shifted into a global network company. And then on the right side of this graphic is another company, which is WBD Streaming and Studios. So this is going to be their content production capabilities. This is going to be Warner Bros. Discovery's, HBO Max, TNT Sports, also Warner Bros. Like the studio. This is a really crazy period of time for AEW. And the reason why I think this is such a necessary conversation is because of the fact that Warner Bros. Discovery did not list AEW in either side of these companies. So this is now begging the question, what is AEW's value to Warner Bros. Discovery? And I want to talk about this because there's been an interesting development. Now, I'm just going to flat out say it. I feel like you guys are being lied to. And the reason why I'm saying that is because AEW has been told, we've been told that AEW is doing 500,000 viewers. AEW is a very big, valuable property for Warner Bros. Discovery. But as you guys saw in the graphic, AEW is not listed. And if AEW was such a major driver for Warner Bros. Discovery, it seems like they would be actively promoting that. And you don't see that here in their official graphic. And of course, this is going to be one of those conversations that maybe people don't want to have. And Billy, I'm going to bring you in here. When you see that Warner Bros. Discovery, the parent company for AEW's television deal, and you see that Warner Bros. Discovery is not actively promoting AEW, whether it's going to the streaming side or to the global network side, what do you make of that?
Well, I mean, obviously you have to look at it like this, right? So there's always the idea that it could be under just like the sports category and it kind of sitting there. The problem with that is if even if it is under the sports category, I think you listed the NCAA. Am I correct about that?
Yeah.
Yeah, you listed the NCAA. So obviously the NCAA is obviously a huge program that is connected to Warner Brothers Discovery. So when you say that, you have to think, well, they're listing NCAA, so that means the NCAA is obviously a big deal to them, right?
Yeah.
So you kind of have to beg 2 questions at the same time. Okay, is AEW that important to Warner Brothers? Well, they listed the NCAA, so if they're that important, shouldn't they list AEW? But they didn't. So now, kind of what you were saying a moment ago, talking about being lied to, I think that's kind of been the question, with these wrestling companies over the course of the weekend and things like that, and just being lied to in general. The thing about it is yeah, we probably are being lied to. I'll just be the one to flat out say it. I think these companies, at the end of the day, they boast themselves more than, maybe the next, just to try to, do this, have these conversations, get us engaged. And I think overall, all it's going to do is hurt AEW in the long run, because AEW has always struggled, especially because Warner Brothers Discovery has struggled for the, however long, just trying to get this deal situated in the first place, right? Because we've been talking about them, going to streaming services forever. Finally, they go on Max, but they're still on TNT, they're still on TBS, and nothing's ever situated. Then HBO announces that they're going to be going back to HBO Max from Max. Now they're two publicly traded companies. It just seems like Warner Brothers Discovery may not know the direction, which is ultimately hurting AEW because they're not being transparent as well.
So now I'm going to bring up something very interesting, and this is where things get a little complicated, and this is where I feel like maybe people should kind of hold off on talking about AEW and their streaming numbers. So AEW now has the reveal where like they're kind of screwed, right? Like this news gets revealed, and this is where AEW gets screwed, largely due to the fact that there's been all this talk about AEW being a driving force for Warner's. So I'm gonna read something to you guys, but just to reiterate for those who are joining us now live, Warner Brothers Discovery is completely splitting up into the two companies. And now the way that they've revealed it is actually very worrisome for AEW, because one company is going to be, as I've mentioned before, it's going to be like the home programming, the home garden TV, Food Network, things like that, Adult Swim, TNT Sports. But AEW they're not there, right? They're not being shown. MLB is being shown. It's like all these other sports properties are being shown, but not AEW. Okay. So now AEW is under a TV deal with two separate companies. And then this is where things get even more tricky, because HBO Max is going into the separate company, which is the WBD Streaming and Studios Company. So two publicly traded companies. AEW is not being advertised for both. However, Alex Sherman from CNBC Sports, he's a journalist over there. He comes out and says the new WBD Global Networks company will consider Overtime the best place for sports to reside. WBD CEO David Zaslav says sports has never really been a driver for HBO Max. Now they are shifting into a new strategy. So for those who tell us AEW does 500,000 viewers on streaming, well, I think AEW has been lying. BJ Bethel, Dave Meltzer, I think some of these guys who are constantly touting the AEW streaming performance numbers are directly lying to people to make AEW look better. But on the other side of things, David Zaslav himself, who is going to be running this new company, he was never a big believer in sports. And everybody has said that AEW is considered a sport. Now you look at it from the perspective of there's these two companies, right? These two new companies, and one of them is nobody really knows where AEW stands with either one. And then what gets actually really trickier, by the way, Billy, and this is where things kind of get thrown for a loop, is the fact that AEW did reveal that they will be doing pay-per-views on HBO Max. Well, now HBO Max will be a separate company. It's going to be a separate entity. So you have to wonder if that's going to continue the way that they've planned, especially if the CEO of that company is coming out publicly saying that sports aren't a driver for HBO Max. So it just seems like there is this very, very weird vision for what is to come here. Like, I don't think Warner Bros. Discovery knows exactly what they're doing, and I think they're completely pivoting away, which ultimately does impact AEW. And by the way, I don't think it's fair to AEW in the slightest.
No, it's not. But I think it has a lot to do with transparency too, because all it does is lead us to have conversations like this. When we have HBO and we have Warner Brothers or whoever, and we have AEW kind of just leaving people in the dark and not being 100% transparent about things that are actually going on. Now, granted, it's not their job to. They don't necessarily have to. But that also, again, leads us to conversations like this. Journalists are going out there and putting themselves on the line saying these things. So we're ultimately looking at journalists to be like, oh, well, look at everything that they're saying. And, people are now trusting, oh, well, 500,000 is for sure the number. And then you come back and we're having this conversation today. And it's like, no, 500,000 was probably never the number. You were probably lied to, and all that does is hurt the company in the long run. Because I know that there will be people to defend AEW to the moon, but there will be people that felt that they were lied to. So again, it goes back to transparency. Transparency between these companies has always been one of the biggest problems that they've lacked. They've never been upfront and honest about the things that are actually taking place. Again, they don't have to, but all it does is hurt your company more in the long run. AEW could potentially be left in the dark here. It's not fair to them at all. It's messed up, in fact. But regardless of the fact, because of them being not being transparent, it now makes us feel, okay, I can't make my voice heard for this company. I can't go to bat for them. I can't say to, because again, our voices matter. We've seen it this weekend, right? We can't make our voices heard to go to bat for a company like AEW, to go to HBO Max and be like, hey, why aren't you putting more priority on this company when nobody's being transparent? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I think it kind of becomes a sad story too, because when you look at this graphic, right, and you see that they're like, yes, okay, you're trying to maximize as much as possible for your shareholders, but the problem is you got to have a synergy, right? So AEW's logo is nowhere on the graphic. People could sit here and argue, well, it's on TBS, it's on TNT. Well, MLB is also on TBS and TNT. NCAA is also on those channels as well as True TV. And yet they have their own graphic, right? They're being promoted and marketed as a driving force for Warner Bros. Discovery. And what that is because the brand value of those brands currently exceed AEW. So that's where I feel like we're being lied to, because if AEW is truly this driving force on the Max streaming app, like we've been told, then I feel like AEW would be represented here clearly on the graphic. But I also feel like those numbers that we're hearing, this basically delegitimizes all of those reporters talking about those potential numbers. And we could sit here and say, oh, well, this person broke the news of the TV deal. No, I think what people need to understand here is that the TV deal now is in jeopardy because these two companies have different goals and visions now. If you are David Zaslav and you're running Warner Bros. Streaming and Studios, and a big part of that driving force behind that company is HBO Max, then you are going to you're probably going to prioritize the DC Comics. You're probably going to prioritize those entities, right? HBO Max, if AEW is such a strong performer on there, but David Zaslav is now publicly saying, hey, it's not a driving force. Sports aren't a driving force of HBO Max. That means they're changing their identity of what they want HBO Max to be. So this comes at a very difficult time because we've been told that AEW pay-per-views are coming to Warner Bros. And it's coming to HBO Max. We still haven't seen that. We're 6 months into 2025 and we still haven't seen that. So in the meantime, we also got AEW pay-per-views coming to Prime. To me, it just seems like there's no corporate synergy between Warner Bros. Discovery as a company in general, and then also what you're seeing with all the properties underneath it. And, deep down inside, I feel like AEW gets the worst of it because what made AEW so special with Warner Bros. Discovery was that synergy. It was the fact that you could watch the NBA and it's promoting AEW. It's the fact that AEW, it's being advertised and marketed in different areas of the show or different shows. And then, of course, with the Max streaming service now being its own separate company, a separate entity, and the person who runs it doesn't believe sports are a driving force, well, that means AEW wasn't really a driving force for HBO Max. And by the way, this is not actually a thing against AEW. I want to be perfectly clear about that. This is not an anti-AEW thing. This is an anti-Warner Bros. Discovery. Like if I could be real, I think Warner Bros. Discovery, before they merged with Discovery, it was already dead in the water. It was already struggling. It was already doing bad. And AT&T had owned Warner Bros. Discovery. Well, they owned Warner Bros. And then they decided to, just offshore that. And then, Warner Bros. Discovery becomes a thing and they're still struggling. And so they're having an identity crisis of what they want to be as a company. Now they lost the NBA rights to NBC. This is becoming a whole scenario where the people that are impacted by it are the people that are producing the content. And I actually feel really bad for AEW because of the fact that, yes, who cares what Meltzer and BJ Bethel say? They could come out and they can say, hey guys, they're doing 500,000 viewers on Max. Well, if that was the case, if they were really a top performer on the Max streaming service, then they wouldn't have to pivot away from their strategy. and they're not. That part is true. Clearly, that part is they're not a driving force for Warner Bros. But the problem is it's not AEW's responsibility to be the driving force for this multi-billion-dollar entity who can't seem to make the right decisions. And that's why we saw them go from Max back to HBO Max. We're starting to see all these little different shifts. It has become so problematic. And I think what this really means, and I'm going to throw this prediction out there before we move on. And Billy, I would love to hear your reaction. But I genuinely believe by the next time that AEW has a TV deal, we will officially see AEW move on from Warner Bros. 100% of AEW's entity will not be distributed 100% by Warner Bros. In any capacity. So that might mean Collision gets shifted off to another provider while Dynamite stays. Something of that nature. That's what I think is going to happen. I believe they will follow the WWE system where they go CW, Netflix, USA, right? Like I think they're going to have multiple different partners because it is very clear that Warner Bros. Discovery at this point in time clearly cannot provide AEW with that 100% synergy that's going to be beneficial to both parties. And I think it's going to be very impactful to AEW without Warner Bros. Actually having their head on straight.
So, when the partnership between AEW and Warner Brothers was announced, it was a really big deal because of not seeing wrestling on TNT in over like 17 years or something like that, whatever the number was, 18 years. And it seemed very cool at the time until you started, as time would go on, you would start to see the cracks within. You would start to see how bad Warner Brothers, how bad some of their companies were ran. Like, let's use HBO Max, right? How it's just been a complete mess, since its inception. I'll be honest with you guys. I mean, yes, there was some good stuff about it, but it's always kind of been a mess. So, to give my reaction to you, I'll say this, man. I do see a world where AEW does end up leaving Warner Brothers because the thing about Warner Brothers was it hadn't been seen in so many years, and it made it cool. And, you kind of leave that fairy tale land and you start to realize, like, okay, you can't work with everybody, right?
No.
It's time to move on.
A lot of the blame that I see publicly is David Zaslav. And David Zaslav was one of the key components to AEW and their success as a TV partner. So it will be very interesting. But I think if we don't see some serious change out of Warner Bros. Discovery, I do think AEW eventually dips out. And the good thing for AEW, let's not talk creatively, right? But the value that they bring to a TV network is live TV 52 weeks out of the year, 2 different shows. They offer several hours of live programming. They are the second largest wrestling company in North America. Let's not talk creatively, but if we talk about the optics of it, Apple, Amazon, who wouldn't want that? At the end of the day, you can't. It's not apples to apples comparing a sitcom to a wrestling show, and it's not apples to apples comparing wrestling to NBA because the NBA season is only 82 games a year. WWE and AEW provide 365 year-round content. So there is this benefit for AEW if they keep doing what they're doing. I do predict that it gets canceled. I actually will go as far as saying I believe AEW and Warner Bros. Discovery will eventually break away. Like, I believe AEW gets canceled off WBD within the next 5 years. And it actually has nothing to do with AEW creatively. It has nothing to do with AEW as a business. It has nothing to do with AEW. All the blame goes to Warner Bros. Discovery. For them to split into 2 separate companies and, David Zaslav saying that sports are not a driving factor for HBO Max. Yet we have been told this entire time that AEW is doing 500,000 plus viewers. This is not an issue with AEW. This is an issue with Warner Bros. Discovery. This is a company, again, for years and years and years, they just can't seem to get it right. They don't know their identity. They don't know what they're trying to do. They're in a lot of debt. They're going to start selling intellectual properties. DC Comics should be a larger deal to them. And even that, they can't seem to figure it out. So if they can't seem to figure it out, plus you lose the NBA TV deal, AEW probably won't be on WBD within the next 5 years, but I'm also predicting that AEW will be so valuable that Apple, Amazon, some of these other companies are they're going to bring them in, and that's going to be even better. So ultimately, I want to see what happens, but I just want to leave everybody with this. We can sit here and argue till we're blue in the face. AEW is good, AEW is bad. However, what really matters is the company that is distributing their content has to have their heads on straight. And currently, as it stands, Warner Bros. Discovery does not. And that's the reason why they're making these changes.
Agreed.
With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to turn our attention into our next topic of today's video. WWE AAA Worlds Collide has shattered some really big records. And I'm super excited to talk about this. Maybe you guys have seen it, maybe you guys haven't. But WWE TKO has announced today that Worlds Collide set a record for the largest live audience in company history for a YouTube broadcast. The event peaked at 764,389 live viewers across WWE and WWE Espanol YouTube channels during the main event between El Hijo del Vikingo and Chad Gable. Additionally, Saturday's broadcast has been watched by more than 4.1 million viewers on YouTube in the first 24 hours. On X, Worlds Collide was the #1 trending topic globally on Saturday, and WWE generated more than 32 million social views across all platforms in the first 24 hours. This obviously comes after months of WWE announcing that they are acquiring AAA. A lot of people were curious as to what kind of success this event would hold. And I feel like me and you were not able to talk about Worlds Collide. So we'll use this opportunity to discuss a little bit.
Let's have a conversation, brother.
Let's talk about it. First, before we talk about the show itself, what is your reaction to these numbers? What were you expecting? What would you say is it good? Is it bad? What do you think?
Well, it's WWE doing what WWE does. Let's be honest. AAA, they have a very wide audience in Mexico. Maybe not that same audience in, the United States, right? So when you look at it from that point of view, WWE just helped out a company to get more globalization, right? And they did a really good job at it. And hey, not only that, us in the United States, who some may not have known about AAA or maybe didn't watch AAA, got to see some awesome new talent, right? And they got to see a different type of style of wrestling that maybe they're not used to. Maybe they've seen bits and pieces of it, right? Which we have, the Rey Mysterios of the world, the Santos Escobars of the world. We've seen bits and pieces of it, but you've never actually got to see it on that really big scale. And, this past Saturday, you got to see it on that big scale. And it seems, obviously, that people were a fan of it. So when I see those numbers, they don't really shock me. I mean, it's WWE doing what WWE does. They're a global entity, and they do numbers, and they do numbers well. And when they do something that's a little out of the box, people are interested. So there you go.
I think it's so crazy. First, there's a couple things you got to look at when you're looking at these numbers, right? Like me personally, I remember thinking with it being on YouTube, that is a weird choice. And I still don't understand the decision for them to put it on YouTube. I don't get it. What I like about this, though, is that YouTube, the numbers are public. You can see what these numbers are. So WWE isn't lying about the numbers. I find it fascinating that there was this much viewership for this card, which, I mean, it had a little bit of a build for some of the matches, right? But it was the first time WWE and AAA have worked together. AAA is not the biggest. It's not the premium Mexican wrestling company, right? Like, it's not CMLL. We know this. I still find it impressive. I find this to be really impressive that WWE was able to do this and then to get 4.1 million views within 24 hours. Again, like, you could see that publicly. There's something really fascinating about that. And to me, what I think this actually ultimately means is that Worlds Collide will hopefully become a yearly thing. And I do want to get your opinion on the show, and we'll talk about some of the things that have happened there. But I would like to believe that Worlds Collide next year should include Noah and Marigold. I think that's the first order of business.
Yep, I think if you... Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think if you want to globally expand this and make this even bigger, yeah, you involve more companies. Get TNA more involved, too.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, and by the way, this was a WWE produced AAA event. Like, this was the first time people got to see AAA in a highly produced environment, which I'm just going to flat out say it. Like, that's what AAA needed. And we'll see how this transitions because we have Triple Mania next. Well, we have Triple Mania Regia this month, next week. And then we also have Triple Mania next month, which we know WWE will be a part of. Now I'm curious to see how that is going to be produced because Triple H is saying that they're not going to change AAA. I'm not sure if I necessarily believe that. But
I don't know. I thought Jeremy Borash did a really good job producing the show.
Yeah, so Jeremy Borash was the producer. He was the main guy running the show. He did a phenomenal job. And I think when you get those kind of numbers and you see how engaged it was and how great it was for WWE, this is a no-brainer. Like, this is WWE basically, imagine what it's like, Vikingo beat Chad Gable in a classic, an absolute classic. To watch Vikingo, El Hijo del Vikingo, to watch this guy go in the ring and have a slow, methodical wrestling match with Chad Gable that had its moments of crazy spots too. It was so fascinating to watch. And I think WWE fans who might not know Vikingo will know Vikingo. And I think with WWE, this has to be the thing that they keep doing. They have to keep integrating AAA into the product. And that's one of the big things that I'm hoping we see from WWE here. But what I really want to see is that this is not WWE just highlighting AAA once and then, let's make it NXT Mexico. I hope this is a scenario where we continue to build what AAA is, give that WWE influence, have WWE wrestlers cross over, build it up, and continue to have more content which, by the way, WWE Peacock deal, like, there's some value in that AAA tape library. There, you know what I'm saying? Like, there's a lot of things that they could be doing. Man. So I hope this becomes a main staple. Now I want to ask you, Billy, you watched Worlds Collide. You did a watch along. Give me your reaction to the show, things you like, dislike. What was like your overall feelings about the show?
So going in, I'll be honest with you, I was very curious to how they were going to how they were going to just use this AAA partnership and make sure that they're keeping it 100% authentic to the heritage and everything that AAA has brought to the table for so many years. And they kicked off the show with that. If you watch the show immediately, you've seen the opening and you've seen how they, really highlighted Antonio Pena and, just really highlighted all the wrestlers that came there and what they would go on to be, the Eddie Guerreros of the world, the Rey Mysterios of the world. They really highlighted all of those guys and really paid homage. And I thought that was super important. And WWE, they tend to do a good job at that. They tend to do a good job at paying homage instantly. So we got to see that. I thought that was awesome. I loved it. I loved it. It was so funny. One of the funniest parts to me was Shawn Michaels and Triple H standing there just to get unserious for a second. There's still a part of me that just cannot believe that WWE is ran by D-Generation X. I still find that to be funny.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite parts coming out of the show was obviously Vikingo and Chad Gable. Chad Gable, contrary to disbelief, had to wrestle 2 hours later, right? He had to go wrestle another match at Money in the Bank. And the match that he put on at Worlds Collide with Vikingo, 10 out of 5, right? They just tore the house down. And I seen somebody say it the other day. They just said, that wasn't even Vikingo's full potential. And it's true, because I've seen him wrestle in AEW. So I know what some of his full potential does look like, right? So that was awesome. Another thing that I know we're probably going to talk about here soon was Mr. Iguana.
Yes.
Right? Mr. Iguana was probably the most entertaining thing to come out of that show for me personally. He's amazing. And I'll be honest, he was not somebody that I was very familiar with. The person out of that match that I was familiar with was Octagon Jr.
Yeah.
But getting Mr. Iguana and him doing everything that he did, I thought that was awesome. And then you had Lince Dorado, kind of playing that heel character there for a moment. I thought that was cool. They didn't necessarily have to do that because you knew all of those guys. This was more of a respect type of match, but Lince Dorado still played into the crowd, stepping on the Iguana. Thought that was great. If I had to take away any of the negatives, maybe it would just be, maybe again, this is the first time, so it's hard to say that it's even a negative, but kind of giving these guys more of a spotlight instead of like the 6-man tag matches. Maybe you had Mr. Iguana, go up against somebody, in a singles match or something like that, like Santos Escobar. Again, this is just me throwing out names. I guess that would be my only thing, but even then, I thought it was really cool, just for that introduction. And then obviously Dom Mysterio. Dom Mysterio playing into the crowd, ends up getting a match. Octagon Jr. goes in at Money in the Bank, is put in front of numerous amounts of people. So now people can learn a little bit more about Octagon Jr. And they made mention of things that he had done in TNA as well. I thought that was awesome. So, yeah, that was my little review of the show, and our watch along was awesome.
Yeah, it was cool. It was a great show. The Fatal 4-Way was absolutely incredible. Javon Evans and Ethan Page really killed it, but also seeing Laredo Kid go out there and kill it was very nice.
Yep.
I think also we really got to have that conversation of, Conan doing commentary, because I actually did not view it as a positive because of his energy being so lackluster. Corey Graves was such a great commentator, which he's been praised very heavily for it. But I felt like the only downside that I had to this entire show was the fact that Conan was just kind of boring on commentary. But on the flip side of that, he is also very knowledgeable and very, very smart, and he understands the history, and he was very good at educating people. I would like to see Conan kind of step it up with his energy. Because, if you guys watch my content, I'm a big guy like with Mauro Ranallo and some of these guys that just really, really add that energy to it. And the matches were really great. I feel like everybody looked good. The one part I'll disagree with you, though, is how you were saying maybe like more singles matches, like the 6-man tag. The only reason why I would disagree with that, and you're very valid because you said, it's the start. A lot of WWE fans don't know who these talents are. And I watch AAA, but I don't watch AAA religiously. I can't. It's not possible. I watch so much wrestling. It's impossible. But I know these people. And I felt like that's actually where WWE did really good, where like they were telling the backstory to some of these guys. The video packages throughout the night were very beautifully done. I only have one negative, and then we can move on.
Yeah, go ahead.
It wasn't in a freaking 6-sided ring.
Yeah.
That was my only gripe.
And there were some people online that were like, oh, wait till they get the 6-sided ring, then we'll really have a discussion. Yeah, no, I could see that. Just one more thing before we move on, because I know we got to move on. One thing I will say, and it's an argumentative point of the Conan thing. While I understand that people are, highly, they want to be energized when watching the shows, some people, and I'm not saying it's everybody, but some people some people prefer education. And Conan did a very, very good job at educating the fans.
Yes.
Now, I don't think Conan, it depends how WWE is going to do it. I don't think he will be, that person moving forward. In fact, even when I heard him on commentary to begin with, I didn't think he was going to be that person going forward. I thought and always felt that he was the guy there to educate the United States of America, the people here that were watching the show and maybe have not been used to everything that AAA has done. He was there to educate you. He wasn't there to excite you. That's why they had Corey Graves. He was there to do that. Yeah. Conan was your educator. He was teaching you the things. He was telling you who these people were. He was telling you where they come from. He was telling you about their families and all of those things. And to me, that felt important.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. Now, I do want to segue into Mr. Iguana, because Mr. Iguana was definitely a highlight of Worlds Collide. Very, very clear that WWE struck gold here. Mr. Iguana comes out. You mentioned the Lindsay Dorado thing. Even at Money in the Bank, they're highlighting Mr. Iguana. They've already dropped Mr. Iguana merch. WWE is very high up on this guy. Now there's reports that have come out that Mr. Iguana is expected to be utilized in NXT in some capacity. Fightful had reported that Mr. Iguana basically really impressed officials. WWE wants to capitalize on this. There's a source in NXT who's come out basically under the belief that they're pushing for him to be on NXT programming. Now, I love this. It doesn't get better than this. You introduce a talent who a lot of people don't know. He's got the comedic spots, but he's so talented in the ring. He's connecting with everybody. You got the puppet. To me, the puppet's very reminiscent of the Cobra from Santino, but just this is like the Cobra, but on steroids. It's, he was doing the thing where he does like the kip up and it flips with the La Yesca falls onto the shoulder. Just everything about this was perfect. And now it's under the belief that WWE wants to bring him into NXT in some capacity. And so I thought about this for a second because it is a comedic character and it's one that's going to resonate very well. Very clearly, the WWE universe was falling in love with this right away. So now I have to ask you two things. One, you'll probably say yes, Mr. Iguana should be in NXT. But how do you think WWE should utilize the AAA talent who are in Mexico? Should they be brought into the WWE universe on a more consistent basis? Should they just keep them separate from WWE's roster and then some crossovers? How do you see the talent share between AAA's roster and WWE? Because not only did Mr. Iguana do very well, but of course, Pagano, we can't forget about Octagon Jr. He literally appeared on Money in the Bank. He had a singles match at Money in the Bank, which was crazy. So how do you kind of see that playing out, and how would you like to see it play out?
Well, so you're asking me two questions, and I may end up rebuttaling you with a question. So I worry a tad bit, and I know that, you kind of said there for a minute, you thought I was going to say yes to him being in NXT. Well, I will say yes, but I worry about it because it's no different, and we've talked about it before. WWE gets they find these hot characters, right? It's no different than Joe Hendry, right? They find these hot characters. They utilize them up until a certain point, and then they start to become stale, and then they get pushed back. So you asked another question. Do I think that they should be utilized often on TV? I do not. I don't think that Mr. Iguana should be one of those people that is appearing on week-to-week NXT TV. I think he's one of those people that should come in, maybe as a surprise every so often, WWE not telling people that he's going to show up, getting him involved in that capacity to make it feel a little bit different than maybe it did with Joe Hendry. Because you yourself were actually a person who was very critical to WWE signing Joe Hendry after everything that he had done already with the company. So do we want to repeat that again?
So, and to argue with that, Joe Hendry is a TNA contracted wrestler who is under a partnership with WWE. AAA talent are signed to WWE. They are owned by the WWE.
Yes. But again, you said it a little bit ago. You said that WWE wants to utilize AAA the same exact way. They don't want to change anything about AAA. So if that is the case, and if you don't want to change anything about it, well, then there you go. It's technically no different than the things that just happened with TNA.
So I think, yes, but it's different if they utilize the talent. If you're doing a talent crossover, it's completely different. Now, one thing I will say, though, I definitely think Mr. Iguana, for sure, 2026 Royal Rumble, absolutely
for
happening.
Sure, absolutely.
And that's what I want to see with some of this stuff, too. It's like, okay, you want to use them in NXT periodically? No problem. I'm cool with that. Especially because WWE talent will be used in AAA. We are aware of this. I believe Dominic Mysterio could be having a championship match in AAA for Triple Mania next month. There hasn't been confirmation on that, but there is this belief that it's going to be happening. But I actually think it would be really cool. Like, Vikingo for sure will become an NXT talent at some point. He will be utilized. It's a no-brainer. You know what I mean? Yep. It's like your own call-up system. It's no different than how they had NXT UK. You got to call.
I was just gonna say it's the same thing. Like eventually you're gonna see Vikingo on Raw or SmackDown. It's inevitably gonna happen.
Yeah.
The problem it's how you utilize it, because you have to understand that Triple Mania is no different than WrestleMania. And how are they gonna produce that in that same capacity, knowing that they already have WrestleMania? Well, that's a question that I've been having.
It's two different things. But yes, I know what you're saying. I understand the concern, but for those who watch AAA, or CMLL and just seeing how wrestling is done in Mexico, it's different than
It is
America. So
different.
yeah,
Yes.
I'm not really too concerned about that, but it is something to definitely talk about and definitely think about. But I am excited to see what they do here. I think Mr. Iguana was very fun. I think there's a lot of talent there who cross over into WWE would be really good. I do think if you are going to have them cross over, you got to put them into storylines so that way you could send talent to Mexico as well to make it
Agreed.
make sense. And that's all I really want is just I want a little bit of cohesiveness between the brands, right? And that's where I will say like that pop for Mr. Iguana when he comes out to the Royal Rumble will be amazing. When Vikingo goes to the Royal Rumble, it's going to be amazing. And really what they did with Worlds Collide, to me, it felt like, yes, it's a WWE product, but it kind of reminded me of like the Cruiserweight Classic or the Mae Young Classic or like NXT UK takeovers. Like it felt like, yes, it is WWE produced, but this is clearly different. And that is the way I appreciated that so much. Worlds Collide gets a thumbs up for me. I think every match was great. I just want to tip my hat a little further or a little extra for Chad Gable and Vikingo because that exceeded anything that I expected.
They killed it, man. They were great.
Yeah. Now let's keep on track with the weekend. Ron Killings returns at WWE Money in the Bank. People are claiming it's a work. Some people aren't claiming it's a work. Ron Killings, R-Truth, has come out and said that it is in fact not a work. Wrestling fans have convinced themselves that this is a work. Triple H in the media scrum said, "Hey, are you enjoying the show? It's all part of the show." He's indicating that it's a work. There's a deeper issue here, and I want to talk about this with you because this is one thing that is starting to agitate me. No joke. No, like this is starting to bother me. Wrestling fans have complained that they wanted R-Truth back. They got him. It doesn't matter how we got him. We got R-Truth back. Why are wrestling fans still mad?
And am I good for a moment?
You're good for a moment. The floor is yours.
Okay. So we actually spoke off camera about this, and I came to you with an initial reaction. So let's just make that transparent first. I said something, but you ultimately told me you were like it's what's the performative outrage?
Yeah.
People tend to create things in their mind, and I've seen a lot of people go out and say, "Oh, well, if WWE just did this, or if they just did that."
Yeah.
No matter what WWE does, they're always going to be looked at as it was never perfect. You never did it the way that I actually wanted you to. I always run back to that MJF promo so many years ago where he said, your opinions change at the drop of a dime. And at the time, I wasn't making wrestling content, so I didn't understand that. I didn't understand what that necessarily meant. I was just a fan watching from the outside looking in. Today, in 2025, I sit here and I told you when we spoke off camera, I said, I feel a little bit differently about that now. I feel like I'm starting to understand why people complain, why people say the things that they say. And it's because everybody is looking for a reaction. And with every reaction, right? Or with every what's the word? I can't even make sense of what I'm trying to say right there. But regardless of the fact, people are always trying to get something out of this. They want to feel something. And to do that, WWE, if they go out and say, "Oh, well, it was never a work to begin with," or Triple H goes out and he says, "Oh, are you just enjoying the show?" They're going to say, "Oh, well, he lied to us." Okay, and then people are going to come out and say, "Well, why didn't he just say that?" Because if he went out and just said that, you guys would look at him and you would belittle him for saying, "I can't believe he just admitted to their mess up, this, that, and the third." That's the point that I'm trying to get to here, is that no matter what these companies do, both WWE and AEW, neither will ever be perfect because we put them on such a high pedestal that they could never be perfect to us.
I think wrestling fans are just fake and corny, to be honest. Like I think
Yeah, dude.
our truth coming back was a very, very like beautiful thing. I was personally very upset when I saw that he was gone from the company. I personally don't care if I was worked. I personally don't care if it's not a work. He says it's not a work, so I'm gonna believe our truth because that's what he's saying. His son is saying the same thing. I think everybody just wants to be so upset. Like we live in an era where with social media and TikTok and YouTube and everybody just wants to be upset. And I think there's this huge initiative to be so anti WWE or so anti AEW that people will literally just have performative outrage. And there's a difference, right? Like I will criticize professional wrestling, but I will always give context as to what I don't enjoy or as to why I don't enjoy it. I'm not here to have conversations with people to change my mind because I'm not trying to change other people's minds. So
Right.
I'm going to feel the way that I feel. But it always disturbs me when I see that people are getting the things that they're asking for, and yet they're just still finding ways to be mad. And it doesn't make sense. Like R-Truth coming back was a beautiful moment because if you're a fan of R-Truth, you don't feel like it was fair that he was gone from the company. Whether it's in work, whether Triple H is lying or not lying, who cares? We got what we wanted, right? Or is this a situation where people pretended like they wanted it because they were fake outrage? And I think this performative outrage that we see is kind of hard. If I was Tony Khan, if I was Triple H, if I were these companies, I don't know if I would listen to social media as much because I don't know if people are being legitimately, true to this. It was said that WWE was paying attention to the reactions backstage and Roman Reigns and Undertaker and some of these other guys really spoke up. If that's true, that's amazing. That's who I would be paying attention to because it sends the wrong message to your growing wrestler roster. Hey, your loyalty doesn't matter. But Triple H lying or not lying, I don't think any of that matters. And the same, at the end of the day, it is what it is. But we got what we wanted. That's what matters.
Yeah, that's what we all wanted at the end of the day. That's what we were all looking for. I mean, I don't know what the uproar is. I don't know what it's about, and, you can say it's defending Triple H. It's not that at all. There's never been a side of me that defends any of these people. I don't think that they deserve the defense, but I will call out common sense when I feel that it's due. And we should just all have common sense and understand like there was never going to be a time where WWE walked out there and said, "Oh yeah, look at us, we messed up." It was never going to happen.
Well, you ready
to be
for
the
this?
bearer of bad news?
You ready for this?
Yeah.
I'll tell you right now, no matter what anybody says, this is the absolute truth. Triple H is screwed because Triple H is not the boss. They come to Triple H and say, hey, you got to make roster cuts, right? And Triple H creatively has to figure it out. Now, if Triple H cuts R-Truth, it's automatically his fault, right?
Correct.
But at the same time, too, it is WWE's fault because WWE, they have people above Triple H. Triple H is the guy who runs creative. So if Triple H cuts R-Truth and there's no blowback, it's fine. Triple H is fine. If Triple H cuts R-Truth and there is blowback, Triple H is screwed because now Nick Khan, Mark Shapiro, Ari Emanuel, The Rock, whoever it is, can literally be like, hey, why'd you do that? So based on the outrage, we'll determine if Triple H gets punished or not. Triple H is screwed. No matter what, he is not the top brass. And I don't think TKO will have his back. I'm just throwing this out there. I genuinely believe if WWE starts to do bad, Triple H is getting the bullshit handed down to him. He's the one getting screwed. And it's not Triple H's fault entirely because Triple H now has people above him who will have to make these decisions. So I don't believe, I'm going to get some flack for this. I'm going to throw this out there. But I genuinely do not believe with my heart TKO has loyalty to any of its employees, to any of its roster members. And the reason why I say this is because R-Truth was cut. Well, it took you over a week to even bring him back. The outrage has been there since day one. You should have known there would be outrage. But they don't care because they're a greedy company. So I'm sorry, but they don't have Triple H's back as much as people would like to think so. And it is what it is. Triple H is going to have to be the fall guy. And that's the way WWE will run. But as long as WWE is successful in making money, the blowback won't matter. Triple H will be fine. But if WWE goes down the shitter based on decisions made by Ari Emanuel, Nick Khan, or Mark Shapiro or The Rock,
Triple H is the
fall
one that
guy.
falls.
And by the way, if you guys don't believe me, go apply for a job today and go work for a corporation who will tell you. By the way, this happens. I've seen this with my own eyes. You go into work, your boss tells you to do something, you do it. Somebody above your boss yells at you for doing it. You say, "Why'd you do it?" And it's your boss's fault. Well, do you think they're going after your boss or you? No, they're going after you. And that's what's happening to Triple H. It's going to happen. It's 100% going to happen. And listen, this is why I'm very anti-corporation, because I think a lot of corporations, no matter how much they want to suck you into this, we're a family, we're all friends and family here. This is the culture we set, loyalty, blah, 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 blah. No, it doesn't exist. It's not real. And I say this publicly because I have experienced it in my own life, and I will never forget that feeling of, damn, all this stuff that I did for you guys, and you don't even treat me with the same level of respect. Do you think I'm a piece of shit and I don't respect myself? Absolutely not. I respect myself so much to say, you know what? I don't need you.
Yep.
And that's scary. That's a scary feeling. But that is my personal experience. And my personal experience is one that's been felt by many people who go into a job working for a corporation, giving them 50, 60 hours a week, only to realize deep down inside they don't care about you. And Triple H, with this R-Truth situation, really exposed TKO in the sense that, oh, Nick Khan was the one who made the deal happen. Okay. Well, whether it's a work or not doesn't matter, right? Whether it's a work or not doesn't matter to me, because I feel like I'm just happy we got R-Truth. But at the same time, too, Nick Khan was the one who doesn't do negotiations, but he was the one to make it happen. Okay. Well, did you give Triple H that opportunity? Did you give Triple H that ability to say, hey, we kind of messed up here collectively. Go ahead and call R-Truth, make it happen.
Right. No.
How did it all unfold? I don't know, but it's something to talk about.
It is, for sure.
Excuse me. With that being said, we have another topic to discuss. Ladies and gentlemen, Fred Durst, is he returning to WWE? Billy, this is an interesting story. There's rumors that Fred Durst is coming back to WWE. Then the rumor gets shut down. But then Fred Durst goes on Instagram and he responds and he says, word has spread and the rumor has me ready to make it a reality. Let's effing make them bounce at WWE. I don't want to spend too much time talking about this, but of course, you and I both know we've had the conversations about Def Rebel. What would you like to see here?
Oh, please. Please. Because obviously the talk was Fred Durst creating a theme song for somebody like Braun Breaker. That was the rumor that was being talked about. Yeah, 1,000 times. Because I'm here to tell you that Fred Durst is going to create a better theme song than Def Rebel will. And here's the next kicker. That's one thing that I miss about pro wrestling that it's been lacking for so long, is music directed towards the character.
Yeah.
That fits the character's narrative. People don't understand, and maybe WWE has just lost touch of that. Music is everything. And as somebody who's done music for a very long time, you realize that it's a feeling that you get. And like, if Fred Durst goes out and makes a song for Braun Breaker, I'd understand, because Fred Durst makes the type of music that I feel like would fit the narrative of Braun Breaker. You know, the leather jacket, just too cool for school. Look at me. WWE forgot about that. And that was one thing that always made wrestling really special. So we won't spend too much time, like you said. I would love to see it, and I hope they do.
Yeah. Excuse me. Fred Durst returning to WWE would be cool. I don't care what anybody says. Wrestling music sucks. I'm going to keep saying this. For all the wrestling fans that wanted R-Truth back so bad, how about we push that narrative for Fred Durst or for Metro Boomin or somebody new for the music thing? Because I don't know what it is about WWE. I don't know if Def Rebel is just like incredibly cheap, but I'm very, very disappointed in the sense that we are watching firsthand. The music scene in WWE sucks. That's
bad.
Like
bad.
It's not good.
You get your one every good theme song every so often, but It just has not been good.
Yeah. Def Rebel is the worst thing that's ever happened to WWE. Like, honestly, when it comes to WWE and the way that they do things, their production is so good, their camera shots are so good, the drone shots, the lighting, I mean, everything that they do production wise is so damn great. Their storytelling is great. Def Rebel just brings down everything. So Fred Durst returning to WWE and doing theme music, whether it's for Braun Breaker, whether it's for other wrestlers, I don't care, man. WWE has the money to do it, and that's the thing. They're just lousy. And if you got the money, bro, go. Metro Boomin wants to do some more. You know,
That's the thing is they're gonna cut him a deal, dude.
Cut a deal. Get these big time producers. Let them make some music. Let these wrestlers have an identity. Like, I'm sorry, bro, but I think between all wrestling companies, and I genuinely mean this, like, I feel like wrestling theme songs for people's entrances have just gone down the drain. People need to have better music. Fred Durst, man, there's the nostalgia about it. Or better yet, if you're not going to hire these people, just go and license out some better music, because the stuff that Def Rebel's doing, it's garbage. It's not working. It'll never work. It's just, it's annoying, bro.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Let's get some new music. How's that sound?
Yeah. Really quick, I just want to remind everybody, if you guys are watching live, go ahead and click subscribe if you're not subscribed. Also, in just a minute, we are going to talk about some very interesting, well, let's just call it what it is. We're going to review Money in the Bank. We're going to talk about Money in the Bank. So coming up, we're going to talk about Money in the Bank. That means we're also going to be taking a look at Super Chats as well. If you guys have not dropped a Super Chat, go ahead and consider doing so, because once we get to that part of the Super Chats, that's it. So we're almost at our Super Chat goal. Billy, I want to turn our attention to Money in the Bank. Seth Rollins has won Money in the Bank. Naomi has won Money in the Bank. Logan Paul, John Cena. I think that's a potential match for Night of Champions. I think we got some stuff brewing. I think there's a lot of stuff that has happened at Money in the Bank. A lot of good, a lot of bad. Actually, honestly, I don't really see any bad. I'm not even going to lie. I feel like for the most part, everything was really good. But I want to hear your opinion on Money in the Bank from what, you know, your perspective is. Let me know.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I told you on the phone, and I stand by what I said there. There's just this part of me that feels like I'll just say it was meh. I obviously thought the Naomi, her winning the briefcase was great. That was the right decision. Becky Lynch winning the championship, as much as I didn't like it, I understood, hey, probably the right decision, right? The Octagon Jr. Dom Mysterio stuff was really cool. The men's Money in the Bank match is kind of where I had my little bit of a problem, because I felt like we were wasting potential on LA Knight. I feel like we're wasting a guy, and I hear people's arguments saying like, oh, they're just going to turn him heel and maybe that will fix the problem. Regardless of that fact, I don't know if there is even a problem, or WWE has just made it a problem. And the thing about it is when we spoke off camera, and I'll just be honest with people, when we spoke off camera, the conversation was, you know, that LA Knight is just a person who is involved in when a lot of stories are currently going on. The thing about it is they've made him a very big deal. So I feel like, in my personal opinion, that they should be utilizing him because of the things that he's brought to the table. And Triple H said in the press conference later on in the night, he said, "Oh, he's going to be rewarded soon, whatever the case is." Regardless of the fact, he should have been rewarded 3 years ago. The guy has been doing his thing. He's out there doing commercials. He's out there, during the kickoff show, he's out there introducing himself, handing the title over to these profit organizations. He is doing everything that a champion is supposed to do in the WWE. And the fact that WWE has not given him that, they gave him a United States Championship, a title that has been washed down and watered down so badly that a lot of the times, up until just recently, we didn't even really want to see it on TV. So here's the thing. Yes, the United States Championship run, it was fine. It was what it was. Regardless of the fact, we seen him in that feud with Roman years ago. We seen him try the Money in the Bank numerous times, and here we are again, watching it happen. And I understand people are like, oh, well, Seth needed it. Me personally, I just feel like he did not need that Money in the Bank briefcase. I felt like there were other options that they could have took to get Seth Rollins to that World Heavyweight Championship. I truly do.
Me and you will always bump heads on the LA Knight argument.
That's fine.
You're
we're
touting
gonna
all these
have
things.
to.
Yeah, Billy, because you're touting a lot of stuff, right? You're touting, he's doing commercials, he's doing this, he's doing that.
He's a company guy. He's the company guy.
He's doing his job.
Okay, yeah. Reward
so
him for doing him a job. Or again, are we just not going to reward somebody who's doing it, not only doing their job, but excelling at their job?
Okay, but there's also other things that are currently ongoing where other people are doing their job as well. And they're excelling.
The problem is I just gave you the option that you could have done differently to give him that briefcase.
Okay, so book it for me.
You have Seth Rollins enter the king of the ring.
No. Book LA Knight winning the Money in the Bank.
Book him winning the Money in the Bank?
Yeah, book it. He wins Money in the Bank. How does he do it? What does he do?
He goes in. Tonight would have been a perfect night. Okay, you want him to turn heel? Here's a perfect opportunity. He doesn't even have to turn heel immediately. He wins the World Heavyweight Championship tonight from Jey Uso. He cashes in. He joins Raw. You start to see him work more as a heel on TV. And then you have the King of the Ring tournament that is currently taking place. You have Seth Rollins do his thing. And then Seth Rollins can go out, do whatever he does. And LA Knight ultimately is just kind of this tweener character. It's not that difficult. Regardless of the fact, what you're gonna try and do is bring to the table that Seth Rollins is the heel on Monday Night Raw, and they already have that guy. Regardless of that fact, there were different routes that you could have taken.
Yeah. So what about Sami Zayn? Sami Zayn's been working and doing all this stuff.
You mean another guy that we've all been touting for to get this World Heavyweight Championship opportunity and is probably not even going to get it.
Just proved my point. There's a lot of people who deserve a World Championship, but not everybody could. So that's the reason why I disagree with you. Fundamentally, there's a lot of people.
But again, I don't even think Sami has done all the things that LA Knight has done. When it comes to being that quote unquote company guy, I do not believe that Sami has done that. Sami has done very good. Do not get me wrong. People are going to take that however they want. Sami has done very good, but he has not done what LA Knight has done.
What about Finn Balor?
What about Finn Balor?
What about Karrion Kross? What about all these other guys who show up to work and do their jobs?
You're trying to make this argument about jobs, and there's a level of like, yeah, they do their jobs really well, and then there's the level of like, hey, we've been waiting for this for a very, 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 very long time. So you can try and make that argument and twist it, but I do believe that there is a difference. This is me personally. When somebody goes out and they're out there working their tails off for your company, they should be rewarded. They're out there doing the nonprofit stuff, going to these events, going and doing all those extra steps. Again, maybe performative outrage, right? I'm willing to admit it. Regardless of the fact, though, it's something that I believe in.
Listen, I want to be on the record when I say this. I'm not against LA Knight becoming a world champion. I'm not. He's just not ready. I'm sorry, it's not. Yeah. He's just not ready. He's not ready for it. He's a great talent. He's a great worker. He's not ready for it. And you don't do things just solely to do them. Now, I do agree that Seth shouldn't have won. I'll make that argument. I don't think Seth should have won, but I don't think LA Knight should have won. I think if you really want to shock the world, you really want to stun the world, that's where you give it to, honestly, you give it to El Grande Americano, you give it to Solo Sikoa, you give it to you give it to Penta, you do something completely wild or completely different. But the problem is, you can't just do it for the sake of doing it. You have other plans and other things that are currently in the mix happening. And LA Knight has been in 3 Money in the Banks, and people keep bringing that up. But it's like Kofi Kingston was in 7 Money in the Banks. You know, there is this belief that I have in professional wrestling that you're just going to be a mid-card guy until there's an opening. And I'm sorry to say this, but LA Knight is going to be a mid-card guy until there's an opening. And there are just way, way more stories that I care about than watching LA Knight win the world title. It's just the truth. And I think a lot of people do agree with that. I think a lot of people have kind of realized over time that when you watch WWE or AEW, not everybody could be a world champion. So how can you be good at your job and exceed? LA Knight, there's nothing wrong with being United States champion. You know, so it's like these are things that I've realized over time where, like, Money in the Bank, in my opinion, was a great pay-per-view. I feel like what made it a great pay-per-view was all of the decisions that they made were relatively awesome. But I think, like, yeah, you can argue that Seth probably shouldn't have won. Now there's King of the Ring. So now there's going to be King of the Ring. Okay, well, how do you go about that? And then that brings the question, well, like, should LA Knight win King of the Ring? Or should it be Karrion Kross, who wasn't given an opportunity at Money in the Bank? Like, what do you do to shock the world? How do you go about this in a way? And I think WWE just has so many talented people and so many people ready for that top spot that you just can't give it to everybody. And right now, I would go as far as saying WWE has had the 6 to 12 months figured out. So the next 6 to 12 months is pretty much largely figured out between John Cena dropping the belt and Jey Uso, Seth, whatever it may be. And so I would go as far as saying Seth needs to win the belt so that way Braun Breaker can win it at WrestleMania next year, right? Like, there's just a method to the way things are being done. And that's why I'm going to fundamentally disagree with you about LA Knight. And I think putting him in that position where he's a mid-card guy is not a bad thing. And I just want to be perfectly clear. This is not an attack on you, but this is an attack on all the wrestling fans. I think a lot of wrestling fans need to realize that there's literally nothing wrong with being in the mid-card. If you feel like somebody should be in the main event scene, you should be really making your voice heard. And I don't think people actually do that. And I'm not saying you.
I could see what you mean. It's very often that, people will go out and they'll wait till the moment of, to scream the name.
Yeah, which they do that often with LA Knight. Because you know what they weren't doing with LA Knight? When LA Knight was feuding with Shinsuke Nakamura, they weren't voicing their opinions on it. So
I see what you mean with that.
So that's kind of the big issue. Yeah, honestly, Money in the Bank, great show. I feel like for me, the star of the highlight for me was obviously R-Truth coming back was huge. I thought Logan and John Cena were great. Kind of excited to see them go into a singles match. Honestly, probably not a popular opinion, but I do like that idea.
I'm actually kind of excited for it.
Yeah, and then I think also, for me, my highlight was Worlds Collide. Like, I just think Worlds Collide was just such a fun show, and Vikingo and Chad Gable was great. So, what I want to do, though, is I want to turn our attention to the Super Chats. So, if you guys have not dropped a Super Chat, consider doing so now. This way, you are given the opportunity to have your takes read on the stream. Let's pull them up. Let's see where we're at. Brian McHattie dropped a $5 super chat. He says WBD might be coming to the realization that they may have overpaid for the broadcast rights and aren't getting the ROI they expected or were sold on. That's an interesting point. I don't think that's the case. But it is interesting. I don't think that's the case. But I do think, when you look at the Warner Bros. Discovery thing and you look at that super chat, that could be a possibility. That could be a possibility. But again, I don't know if that's fair to answer. And that's largely due to the fact because I don't feel like we're being given transparency with our numbers.
In belief that it is necessarily that, but I could see that being a talking point that people have. Is that, maybe they don't feel like they're getting that return on investment. I don't know.
I mean, if it was really a driving force for HBO, excuse me. If it was really a driving force, like we've been told for HBO Max, I feel like it would be out everywhere. I feel like they'd be bragging about it. I feel like they would be really telling us that.
They did. But a lot of these companies, they'll put clauses in these contracts that benefit themselves. So if something's not working, they can opt out of a contract. And they have legal ways to do that.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I feel like that talking point is kind of tough. Because if that were the case and they didn't feel that they were making them enough money, they could have just opted out of the contract whenever.
Yeah, that's true. It's something to pay attention to for sure. Because who really knows at this point? I just know it's a little fishy. And Brian McHattie actually followed up with that super chat with another $5 super chat. He says AEW can't be that important with how much it gets preempted by the other more important events for sports. Yeah, I mean, if NBA If AEW is performing extremely well in comparison to the NBA and stuff, then they would find a way to make it work. But they do get preempted and they move Collision a lot. And I think that is I mean, there's a reason why they're, which, by the way, a lot of people are hating on the 4-hour tapings. I'm not. If you're going to do them occasionally, I'm okay with it. Once every few months or something like that, it's fine. Yeah. 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 I agree. Shout out to Brian McHattie for the super chats. Rahul dropping $2 Canadian. He says Conan on commentary was different but interesting. Yeah, I think we kind of hit the point of the head with it. Like, he's lower energy, but he is educational, very informational. I don't personally agree with Conan with a lot of the stuff that he might analyze in professional wrestling, but I will never discredit what he knows, and obviously he has a lot of experience. So that's one of those things where I felt like he was valuable. I would like to see Conan involved more often, but I don't know if I would like to see him as a commentator. There was rumors that they were trying to bring in Mike Tenay. There was a financial disagreement there. They weren't able to make it happen. But I would like to see them try to, when it comes to WWE and AAA together, I would love to see them come up with a really cool dynamic. I don't know who that would be. We'll have to find out eventually. And who knows, maybe we'll get more Worlds Collide events yearly or maybe, every few months. Who knows what they do. But I would like to see them figure that out. David Primero dropping $4.99. He says CFO and Jim Johnson had better theme music for WWE. Plus the current theme of Zelina Vega on the Judgment Day don't match with their characters. Yep. That's a common issue. That's a very common issue in professional wrestling. It's very clear, not just in WWE, but mostly in WWE. A lot of the theme song just feels generic. So... yeah. Shout out to David Primero. Point Dexter dropping a $5 super chat. He says, "Sup, Billy and Ango. What are your guys' thoughts on the news that Cedric Alexander could join potentially with TNA? If that happens, great gift for TNA." Billy, I'll let you go first. It's with his wife, Big Swole.
And maybe why Cedric Alexander didn't take that and go over to AEW. And maybe he didn't, right? Maybe he just maybe the finances didn't work out the way that he wanted to, or maybe he's just thinking about himself and his future and what that looks like. Well, yes, AEW is great. Again, they're not much different than WWE. We just had this conversation about bloated rosters, right? And how bloated rosters tend to overshadow people and the things that they may have and bring to the table. AEW has that same problem. They focus on certain talent. It is what it is. So Cedric Alexander could just be looking at his future. He's obviously seeing what somebody like Mustafa Ali is doing. I know people just want to connect him to Bobby Lashley and Shelton Benjamin and do all those things. But truth be told, obviously, him and Mustafa Ali, they've done great things together, the cruiserweight stuff and whatnot. Maybe he's looking at that and is looking at that as a place to where he could go be a top star. You know what I mean? So if that is the case, good for him, man. If he goes to AEW, good for him. Just naturally happy for the guy and just hope that he makes the right decision for him and his family.
Yeah, I said this before in video format and TikTok and stuff, but Cedric Alexander should go to TNA, be the face of the X Division, craft his own identity separate from Bobby and Shelton. And personally, I think him going to TNA would be, it's not only the right move for his career, in my opinion, obviously it's my opinion, in his career, he goes to AEW and he's just another great wrestler in AEW. He goes to TNA, he has the chance to be so much more than that. Which is why I love TNA so much. Being that smaller company sometimes gives people an opportunity to show the world what it would be like if you were given a little bit more love and a little bit more of a push. And we saw that with Drew Galloway, and now look at Drew McIntyre, right? Like, We saw that with Eli Drake. We're seeing that with your favorite LA Knight. Like, there is that benefit. You see a little bit more just because of the fact that they went to TNA. So I do want to throw that out there. Shout out to Poindexter for the $5 super chat. Brian McCaddy dropping a $5 super chat. He says, real question, how is Becky winning a mid-card title a positive? So I will say this. I actually like the fact that she beat Lyra Valkyria in the way that she did. It's because of the fact that Bayley's the big question mark here. So I love the fact that as we build to Evolution, we'll probably get Bayley, hopefully, on Raw tonight. But that is one of the things that I have to just throw out there. So that's why I look at it as a positive. Lyra did a great job winning that IC title. Now you could do a little bit more with Becky without forcing Becky on the main event scene, which, by the way, Julia is going after Zelina. Maybe there's an opportunity for Stephanie to go after Becky at some point. There's a lot of things you can do there, which I think would be a positive. And by the way, as much as I am a critical person of Becky Lynch right now with her heel run, and since returning, the one thing that I love about her holding the mid-card title is we saw what she did when she was NXT Women's Champion, going up against some of the lesser-known women. So I do think we're going to see that side of Becky as well, which would be a positive. So Brian McCaddy dropped another super chat for $2. Unfortunately, I cannot read it because I will probably get demonetized. So Brian said Seth's story is a sad ripoff of Death Riders, but he also added a little bit more to that, which is an easy demonetized thing. So I can't do that. But Brian, I do appreciate your love and support on today's live stream. Thank you. True Flight 11 dropped a $4.99. He says LA Knight was that mid-carder until there was an opening in TNA too, which is true. And then eventually in TNA it opened up to where he could become a world champion. Listen, it's all about the opening. I don't want to argue this point too much. There needs to be an opening. I think there's too many great talented people in WWE right now. Like, if LA Knight was in NXT right now, he'd be world champion. But Raw and SmackDown, it's just too crowded. And, maybe next year. Maybe next year is the year it finally gets done. But he's got to break through. It's very hard to do that right now. And, I do think there's nothing wrong with him being the U.S. champion when he was. So, yeah. Can't really complain about that. Shout out to True Flight 11. Excuse me. D-Rec2 dropping a $5 super chat. Roman's going to cost Seth's cash in and help Jay. It's going to mirror the Brock and Roman cash in. Ooh. It's a bold prediction. I don't hate it though. And Roman and Seth at SummerSlam would be a pretty big. It just depends how long term, I guess, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
yeah,
crazy.
Very, man.
And I believe that is it. I believe that is all the super chats.
Dude, we're back.
Let me just double check just to make sure. Yep. And with that being said, let's just shout out our community leaderboard. Number 1, we got Phil. He is number 1. Number 2 is Pete Rocks. And number 3 is James Jones. Thank you guys for your engagement on today's live stream. According to the YouTube community leaderboard, you guys absolutely killed it. So I do appreciate you guys. Phil said he dropped a member message. I did not see that. It doesn't show me that.
Let me see if I can find it. Hold on.
Are you able to see it? I don't.
No, I can't find it. No, I can't find it. But he did. I did remember seeing that.
Huh. I literally have no way to go back and see.
Well, Phil, drop what you said, man.
Yeah, what did you say, Phil, in your member message? And I will. I was asking if Dom could defend the IC title at Triple Mania.
Absolutely.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, we did talk about that a little bit earlier, too. randomly
Yeah.
got brought up. But he should. And you should see things like that happen.
Yep. In that partnership, absolutely.
You could make a
Or
good
not
argument.
partnership.
They own
You
them
know
now,
what I mean,
baby.
though.
Yeah.
Right. Now I was about to say, you know what I mean.
Yeah, that should be really interesting. I think that's well, Dom and Octagon Jr. was fun, so
I loved it. I loved it.
So it's now you just got to figure out a way to do it.
Yep. That's it. Just got to figure out a way to do it.
And that's what I'm most curious about. But ladies and gentlemen, that is today's live show. I appreciate you all for being here Monday, June 9th, 2025. We hit our super chat goal. Shout out to everybody who joined us. Shout out to our community leaderboard. We will be back tomorrow. Make sure you guys check out BillyTKO at the YouTube, TikTok, all that good stuff. BillyTKO, thank you for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We will see you guys tomorrow.